Hello, and welcome to Lodestar's Lending Leaders. I'm Jim Paolino, founder and CEO of Lodestar Software Solutions. On this podcast, I'm going to be talking to leaders in the mortgage and real estate industries. Our goal is to talk about current events, interesting things from their end of the industry, and anything else that we feel is fascinating. Hey everyone, welcome to Lodestar's Lending Leaders. We have a great guest today, a friend of mine, Candace Russell, who I've met through the industry over the years. She's currently vice president at Carrington Holding Company, focusing on default servicing, government relationships. She's also the founder of You Are Represented, which focuses on mentoring and leadership on women and minorities in the industry. Also, some other fun facts that we'll get into throughout. Candace is both wonderful to talk to and a wealth of industry knowledge. So very excited, and that's underselling it. So this is going to be a fun conversation. Been looking forward to it. Candace, thanks for coming on.
You've given me a lot to live up to in this podcast.
Oh, you're ready. I'm excited. I think this will be some fun things to cover. So I like to always start. No one grows up and wants to be a mortgage banker, and probably even less so wants to be focused on default servicing. So what kind of got you to the place in the industry now? What got you into the industry to begin with?
I tell this story sometimes when we do speaking events and things like that. I like to say that I fell down the rabbit hole. I maybe had a rowdy, tipsy night one time in Huntington, West Virginia, and me and a bunch of friends decided we were moving to Philadelphia. And a friend's mom said, "Hey, we need a receptionist." And I was like, "I'm a waitress. I can do reception." And the truth is I continued to be in this business because I read big, nasty books that nobody else wanted to read, known as handbooks and guidebooks and mortgagee letters. And so as the receptionist, I got the dirty work, and I ended up loving it.
That's a great story too. I'm based in Philly, so having the Philly component to it is funny. And now, as doing the big guidebooks and that nasty work, how has that changed and what you're doing? And seems to be a whole lot of it now in dealing with the government and all of the other things that touch this industry.
I still tend to do a lot of big book reading, except now, instead of reading it and just saying we have to just deal with this is how it is, I often get to provide feedback to the people who write it and try to help remove where it says must instead of should. Right. Or and all of a sudden there's a new guideline that you've got 7 days, and we're like, that's impossible. 7 days is impossible for this test. So one of the things that I really like about all this, the CFR reading and all the stuff that gets really just, puts you to sleep at night. One of the things that I really like now is that I get to help participate. And so I would say anybody that wants to help participate just has to be really into reading.
I like the plug for literacy. I think that's a good kid takeaway already from the podcast. So in looking over the guidelines and kind of diving into that a little more, what are the things that you find companies end up struggling with the most right now, and what are creating kind of most of the pitfalls, even before we get into everything related to COVID?
Okay, so outside of COVID, most of it comes down to small interpretations and then individual differences. And that is when the CFPB gives their interpretation of something and it's different than the agency's interpretation. Those are where everybody gets really involved and, has to get legal counsel and, consultant opinions and all that kind of thing. So can you charge this fee? It doesn't say yes or no. And then, so that's, I think, where most people outside of COVID, and even inside COVID, it comes down to, we're trying to do the right thing. Everybody's trying to do the right thing. Yeah. The difference is everybody can read things a little differently. And if something is silent, you have to make your own interpretations. And if something is very direct, but in opposition to other opinions and other guidance, you've got to fight for it.
So I assume it's not a tie goes to a runner situation when those things are a little bit vague. So what is the general way you see companies dealing with that when there is that ambiguity in a given legislation? Are they going to err on the side of caution?
Always.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of people who want to err. And I would say that caution might be the wrong word. We want to err on the side of the consumer most of the time. That's kind of the first light you try to say, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
And most of the time, if you can understand why you're doing the right thing, that helps with how you were doing work. And if you find out that you're doing it wrong, most of the time there's some safe harbor or something, because everybody was trying to do the right thing. And regulators recognize that sometimes, as long as there's no misbehavior.
And do you see kind of the regulator outlook changing over the last year?
I mean, obviously we had quite a change at the CFPB when the Trump administration came in, and we had those heads, and now it's going to change. And they've made very clear that mortgage servicing in particular is something they're going to be focusing on, particularly because of COVID. So I would say that everybody does a good job based upon the priorities that they have. So if your priority at the CFPB is student loans or auto title loans, because that's where the volume of complaints and the pain is coming from, then you're going to focus on that. So having the new administration come in, they've made it clear that mortgage servicing is in their book.
Yep. I mean, makes sense. Especially when you're dealing with how large these transactions are to people. Buying a car is one thing, but buying a house, that can cost so much more.
The word mortgage is death pledge.
Yep.
At the root. So yes, they're going to be a little more concerned with that than an unsecured loan.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And in dealing kind of on the default space too, obviously there's been a lot of forbearance relief right now. How are you anticipating that changing? Like, how are you dealing with default servicing when defaults are currently down?
So I would say what a lot of people doing, including us, is you are making sure that your staff is being moved to areas where you need it. LawSmith now has people that were working back, claims and prep and they're being retrained. You're also using this time. Remember, even though default servicing hasn't been in the news a lot lately, because it was like on the lower end of foreclosures and everything, a lot of people still were getting rid of the granite from the recession, just those leftover, just can't seem to get out of the system loans. So those back of the house functions were still very much active, even if they weren't being, spotlighted.
Yeah.
So we trade our staff. That's one of the things that we've done. It makes sure that you keep a continuity. It expands the range of your workers, and it keeps everybody employed. It's a good idea.
Yeah. I think one thing I find interesting, and I've for the last, I think 5 months now, had a Google alert up for forbearance just to stay up on news and things that happen, is what's going to happen when that gets removed. And, part of the open questions of, is interest accumulating during these periods? How is this going to affect someone's ability to refinance? What if someone doesn't want forgiveness right now, but it gets granted? It seems like there's just, you're trading speed for accuracy. And I get that you have to do that in a lot of cases, but what are all these things that we're not realizing that are going to be headaches and create a lot of fine print for someone like you?
So I would say that there's a difference. People forget that there's a difference between the forbearance hold and then the exit.
Okay.
So just because somebody was on a forbearance hold doesn't mean they're all going to get the same exits. So anybody could have got the hold. Somebody that was 5 years down could have got the hold. They are not going to have the same exit as somebody that went in March. At least not yet, right? We might see the options broaden. HUD just did that. They just broadened their scope a little bit to allow more relief. What I will say is, I think everybody in the beginning last year was worried about a tsunami, just a tsunami of foreclosures. And what has happened is everybody learned from the last problem, and said, we need options, and we want people to be pretty much right back where they were before the world went crazy. So we've been given a lot of options that will allow us to do that for quite a few people. Now, not everybody, but even though they might not get those COVID options, they still have other options to them, which is the normal loss met waterfalls provided by product. So there's a lot of options that we have here that we didn't have last time. Like everybody was scrambling after, a mountain of foreclosures amassed to try to come up with something. And now we had a path to already get to that. So
I mean, in some ways we have the benefit of hindsight from last time, but also this one we see coming, right? This has, I think, been a topic, I'm sure, for you for the last year at least now too.
Yes. It took them a long time to figure out what HAMP and TARP and everything was going to look like last time. And this time we said, we kind of know what worked and what didn't. So what do we do with this? What was the most relief? So I really think that things like the partial claims and MRAs and the deferrals are going to make a difference in not seeing a tsunami. We'll probably see increased, but not the tsunami.
Hopefully it can be more of like a wave pool.
Yes.
That's the plan. Yeah. Good. Well, shifting gears a little bit, I know we met through the Young Mortgage Professionals group via MBA and both do a lot with people in the industry who aren't the traditional people in the mortgage industry, as the MBA calls themselves, stale, male, and pale, right? And I'm only one word away from that on my end. So I think it's important to would love to kind of talk about your ideas a little bit of what you see of people getting into the industry. How are people now getting into this industry? What are you doing when you're working with people who are, your age when you had started, and kind of see their paths going?
So obviously I think that there's a lot of things systematically that can be done to add to the pool. If you've ever read any of the studies on it, things like anonymizing your resumes, name, location isn't there, having chat interviews. Now, I'm not saying that everybody utilizes those, but there are ways if you want to be a little less unconsciously biased in your hiring. And that's just, every industry has the options for that. So, but what I like is that people are bringing it up. And when you bring it up, people decide whether that's an important focus for them. And, I'm certainly not, I think everybody, especially in this kind of industry, we tend to hire, we see ourselves in somebody and we're like, they'll do good. They'll be excellent at this research thing because I was good at that and they remind me of myself. So I think it's requires us to really look and say, I want to hire things that are not in front of me, like that don't necessarily just reflect what I like about myself.
So you're saying if someone you interview and they say they moved to Texas on a whim after a big night, you're hired.
There's things definitely, they connect you with people. Now, I really think that, if you're looking, one of the things that we talk about in my just little personal group is, if you're in management, take a moment to consciously think about what you're doing and does your management look like your floor? That's one really good, like, does your management look like your floor? And obviously sometimes it's not going to, and you have to decide if that's a problem or not. And I think most people look at it and say, I'm doing the best with what I got. And they have to decide, is it time to do more or better?
Yeah. I think that's one thing you see a lot in the industry with, the spaces that the industry is diverse is usually not the conference hall floor. When you deal with people who are executives, people in sales roles, it usually is a lot different from everyone else who work at these companies. And I guess that could be one thing that's good about now not having conferences or being virtual. It does kind of level that playing field a little bit. Yeah, exactly. It's easier for people to go in and listen and get the content and network and, the way that we've been networking for the last year. So it's, I I hope that it changes. And I really like what you're saying about wanting to see yourself in the process, because I think that's such a powerful tool for any organization, not only, me wanting to hire someone I see myself in, but also if I have someone in a sales role, and I have a loan officer and I want young people to buy their first homes with my company, I should have someone who those people see themselves in. So I think all too often, the right thing to do and the thing that actually helps your business can be the same thing. I think that's true for compliance. I think that's true for diversity in this industry.
Well, and studies on diversity and everything show it's not just this, oh, I'm doing the right thing. It's good for business.
Yeah.
It is good for business. Yeah. So that's, I hate to make it a bottom line thing because I'd love to, just make it this moral stand, but it's good for business. Yeah. It's good for your customers. It's good to bring different points of view into your business. Mm-hmm. Everybody carries different skills. And also I'll point out that when you see yourself in somebody else, you tend to mentor and guide them more. Mm-hmm. So that is one of the things that, again, is an active decision to go, am I doing that for the people that I need to do that for the people who have expressed interest in, mm-hmm. Moving up, moving through, changing? Am I doing that even though I don't see myself in them? Because it's real easy when we see somebody that reminds us of ourselves to go, mm-hmm. going to make sure they know this. Yeah. And it's a little harder when you've got 80, 100 people, maybe more. And you're it's a little more, you've got to be a little more prescriptive with your time.
Right. Or in some cases, maybe you're not the right person for them, but you can help find that person.
Correct.
Too. I think there's a lot of other ways to use that network and help. And part of the nice thing now about groups like Impact is able to kind of bring those things together a little bit better, hopefully. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think going along that line of kind of the right thing to do also being the best thing, going back to compliance, how do you get that point across to people of like, not only are we doing this because we don't want to get in trouble, but it also helps the organization. Like, so
I love in DEI, there's a thing, there's something, and I apologize because I'm going to steal it and not quote who it's from, but mm-hmm. They talk about moving from compliance to culture. Mm-hmm. So a compliance-based program would be, they call it measuring people, mm-hmm. and then, or counting people, and then a culture-based program, which you tend to move into after a compliance-based program, mm-hmm. is making people count. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds like more like a cheesy sales pitch, right. But I like it because compliance culture, there's nothing wrong with compliance culture. There's nothing wrong with making sure that you're doing business with small businesses, especially mm-hmm. when required by your contracts. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It is, do you have the want and drive to move into a culture, not just mm-hmm. a compliance? So I think that is, one, you've got to show the benefit of it. Most people mm-hmm. need to see a benefit to make changes. Yeah. And two, you have to be in a position to where so this is kind of how I feel about my little side group, and that is mm-hmm. Work within your own sphere of influence. Yeah. What is your sphere of influence? Whether you are, a line level worker, or you're at a VP level, or you're at mm-hmm. an EVP level, work within your sphere of influence.
Mm-hmm. And when you kind of want to make that argument to people, what have you found is the most impactful way of doing it?
I wish I could say, and this is just, working in my own little group and being part of Empower and Impact, yeah. and women in finance and all that. Mm-hmm. I would say that return on investment is the very first thing that people need to see. Mm-hmm. And then you can talk about all the great, wonderful things that feel with that. But, if mm-hmm. there's going to be money put into positions and training programs and mentoring mm-hmm. programs, and it's all wonderful. But everybody needs to be able to see the return on that investment. What is it mm-hmm. going to keep people longer? Is it going to attract new talent?
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important too to just keep that in mind, that I think millennials always get put in a boat that, oh no, they don't care about making money or doing these things. It's part of the reason you push for these things is it helps. It makes a big difference down the road. So I think it's important to do that. And I like your point about kind of the impact on working within your influence, because I think people don't realize how many of the little decisions they make can have impacts of who they're bringing into the organization or who is even looking at them, from things that I've seen, like where you're posting applications, of how people can get to that, even like requiring people right away to be on a video chat or something like that. Or one of my big kind of pet peeves are unpaid internships, right? Like that is a very easy way to completely skew who's coming into your organization. But it's something that people don't always put enough thought into. And I don't know if you've seen other areas like that, of like the little changes that can go a long way.
What I would say, and maybe I'm getting too much into my own world here.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is one of the smallest things that I do that has the biggest impact on the people that I come in contact with is I ask them, what are your goals? And I ask them what their goals are pretty much every year. And I don't mean like, I have people that want to be drummers, and I've asked them, is that a career? Is that a hobby? Like we kind of go in more in depth. Is that a career? Is that a hobby? And they go, I'd love it to be a career, but it's probably not going to. I'm like, okay, well, what? As long as it's not a career for you, what do you want to do here with your career? It may not be your number one love, but here you are. What are we going to do with it? And I have found that by just asking, I find out who wants to really move forward.
Yeah.
And grow and do more, and who's happy just coming in, doing their job, going home, and which you absolutely need in every organization. You need the people who like their jobs and just, So I would say not assuming what people want is actually asking them and asking them regularly. And there's a second question, especially if people want to move up, that I ask, which is, what do you think you're going to be doing in management? And if their answer is, I want to go into management for more money, then we talk about how to path them as an individual contributor if they really don't like the things that come with management, people management, HR work, and things like
all that reading you talked about.
Yeah, all the reading. And I was like, and when they say, oh, I just want to help my fellow members, I'm like, well, if you go into management, you're going to be talking to them about the fact that their jeans are ripped. Is that what you're looking for? Because helping them in this case is not going to be what I think you think it is. And so finding who needs to be an individual contributor and finding ways to make them the income that they want on that path, and then finding who really has a want and a drive to go into management, those two things have made a big difference for me.
No, I've asked a similar question in reviews in my last round, where I say, we're at 15 people now. I want this company to grow. What do you think your role is when we're at 50 people? And it kind of does that same thing of seeing how people view themselves. It gives them kind of that excitement of like, oh, I think I can do this. And it helps you as a manager, because as you're planning that, you can be like, oh, not only do I think this person is capable of doing this, but they have the genuine desire, and they're just not waiting for their drumming career to take off.
So I like looking at, I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft. And you have to, in this game, you have to be balanced in your teams, right?
Yeah.
So you got to know who's what and where they're at, what their skills are to create a good team to really kick butts.
Yeah.
I kind of look at it that way, knowing everybody's stats.
I don't know World of Warcraft well enough to make a good reference about different skill sets, but I can definitely understand there's people who just enjoy more introverted work or more extroverted work, or most people wouldn't want to pick up the phone and call people all day. Other people love it. So I think it's really important to find that superpower that everyone has, or the thing they enjoy doing. So we're wrapping up here. I do have two things. The first, I always like to ask everyone, if you could solve one problem in the industry, wave a magic wand, and fix it, what would it be? And
this is not because I don't love it. I do love it. It's my heart, and that is FHA conveyance. It's just it's a complex process, and everybody wants to do it better and faster, and you know what I mean? So if I had a magic wand, probably put me out of a job, but
That's
something I'd make
I know
easier.
nothing about FHA conveyance, so I don't even know where to start.
It is just my heart. I love it. I love looking at it every day, but it is difficult, especially if you haven't been exposed to it, to understand it. And so I would make it easier.
And what would the repercussions of that be for everyone, or for the consumer, I guess?
For the consumer, the consumer, for me, it would be things like releasing their credit, their credit issues when they've gone through a problem on a previous loan. That would happen faster, and then the hope would be that ultimately, anytime in servicing, it's hard to say, especially default servicing, and mine, which is back end default servicing, you hope that it affects the consumer eventually by affecting cost of servicing, which you hope makes the products
and
more
things like
affordable.
A release of credit or processing those faster is ultimately better. And I think that's tough, and that's always an area you see of actually mapping out the ROI of that stuff, of how is this actually helping, because it's back office, it's compliance, it's something we just have to do, but if you do it better, there's actually more effect,
yes.
so.
And there's always that heart of proving a negative. This didn't happen, so we didn't have that, you know what I mean? So
as someone who sells calculators for a living, I definitely can understand that too. It's not exactly something everyone sees, but when there's a problem, it becomes very important. So and I saw from doing a little research before this, on your personal hobbies, you're both a banjo player and a roller derby player, or I don't know, do you have a good roller derby name? Or
I was Killy Kapowski. I've got a few other ones too, but I will say this: I'm bad at both things, but I like them.
I think that's important. You just need to find something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah. I'm bad at both things. I'm not particularly competitive. I'm more of a team player. So, but one of the things that I love about roller derby is that it's highly female-led, and there are men's tournaments too, and there's co-ed and whatnot. But really love that. And I did some refereeing. Well, again, when you're not good at things, you try to just help. So I may not be able to throw down like they used to do with the Thunderbirds for LA, but I enjoy the skating. And banjo I'm also bad at, but growing up in West Virginia, not necessarily the rural parts, but my brother always said if wood had a voice, it would be a banjo, and I just agreed with him and love it.
Well, I think that's a great note to end it on. I really appreciate your time. This was a fun conversation. Hope to have you back at some point.
Absolutely.
And is there anything, if people want to find you, anything you want to plug or mention about Carrington? Forgot to give you the opportunity.
Oh, no. I mean, I love Carrington. If you need to get a hold of me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm fairly easy to Google, and also do all the work with the MBA. I'd love to see anybody work with our Impact, Empower, any of the groups, MA, all that. I'd love to meet everybody. If you want to say hello, say hello.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have in-person conferences sometime soon.
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Candace. Appreciate the time. Thanks for listening to Lodestar's Lending Leaders. Please like and subscribe wherever you get this podcast. If you have any ideas for upcoming episodes or would like to be a guest, please reach out to us at lendingleaders@lssoftwaresolutions.com. Hope to hear from you.